And there we go. Let me do this one quick. Pause this so it doesn't double echo. Okay.
Was that a Flash comic at your desk?
Yes.
Nice.
Okay. Okay. So we're live here. We're Graphic Novel Geeks. Welcome, guys, and we'll start.
All right.
All right. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining us. Hey, we're excited to have a special guest, Dale Barry, the creator of Tales of the Moonlight Cutter comic books with us today. We'll be talking to him in just a little bit. Tales of the Moonlight Cutters is a great, kung fu based comic book with some supernatural elements. Well, a lot of supernatural elements to it. So before we get started with Dale, just had a couple items that we wanted to share. I got a really cool comic book for Christmas, Tales to Astonish number 37. And super excited to get this. It's the third appearance of Ant-Man, which isn't really a super big deal. You can see him there on the cover flying at the villain. And I say third appearance of Ant-Man because Henry Pym actually appeared as Henry Pym before he appeared as Ant-Man. But the cool thing, why I'm super excited about this is just, it's a really old Marvel. It's from like 63 or whatever. And it's just in really good condition. I mean, check out those corners. This is a solid fine, if not better. It's a little bit faded, but man, I just don't really see a lot of old Marvel comics, 12 Sinners in this good condition, just like at a shop. This is more of like something you bid for on eBay that's been professionally graded. So I was just super excited. I'm like, man, this is such great condition. And it's a very minor key comic book, being third appearance of Ant-Man. And
who's the villain?
The villain, the villain was some dude dressed up as a robot. And all right, so what happens here is this guy is
a robot.
Yeah, this guy is like dressed up as a robot, and he's strong arming jewelry stores. And he like maybe he's called the Disintegrator because he's got this gun and he's like, you don't pay up, I'm disintegrating your jewelry, right? And then it turns out that spoiler alert on a 50-year-old comic, it turns out that it's actually this jeweler goes to Ant-Man for help, and he's like, man, somebody strong arming jewelry stores, help me, Ant-Man. And that's the guy who's actually strong arming the jewelry stores.
So great.
So I got this from Matt's Comic Cavalcade up in Albany, Oregon, and he gave me a sweet deal, $100. And man, this just made my year. This is probably comic of the year for me.
You got a lot of good Christmas presents because you got the first appearance of Alpha Flight as well. I saw.
Yeah, I did. Both the cameo and the full third appearance of Ghost Rider and a Justice League of America number 7. So I got some good stuff from Matt's Comic Cavalcade this year.
What's the it's like John Byrne does not get enough credit in my opinion for like his art and all that. I mean, yes, his faces all look similar, but I kind of like miss seeing his comics around because his storylines are great. Yeah,
John Byrne's great. I mean, when I first got into comics, those classic X-Men comics that reprinted that John Byrne stuff was really top of my reading list, and I'm picking those up now.
The classic X-Men are really hard to find too because the backup stories were all filling in the blanks between a lot of the issues, and I think Claremont wrote those too, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I about 5 years ago picked up a pretty nice copy of classic X-Men number 1 because it's like, $10 or something. And so that was for like the best I could find was a very fine copy. And I'm just like, this is undervalued because who wants to pay, not everybody can afford $1,500 for X-Men 94 or Giant X-Men. And like, if you want to read that, you gotta, here's classic X-Men nice and cheap, and you get this new backup story. Why is this only $10? I don't know.
Why does Marvel keep a lot of their storylines out of trade paperback these days too? It's like you go looking for X-Men, it's like it's hard to find anything beyond the current stuff these days. It's like,
Well, they had like switched over publishing houses, right? They switched over to Random House, and so they cut their entire catalog so they could restart it all with Random House. So, and then COVID hit. So in theory, that should be coming back to fruition soon.
hopefully. I almost bought a She-Hulk trade yesterday for like $13 for the last one that came out, just because Jen Walters is like one of the few Marvel characters I'm still willing to read because she's so awesome.
Yeah, a lot of those She-Hulk series are really cool.
The one by Rainbow Rowell, just
Yeah.
her with Titania in the first issue is just like,
Yeah, the current series.
yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that was fun seeing them brawling in a construction yard or whatever it was.
It's just nice to see characters growing. You know,
Yeah,
like being the same but growing, and it's like their reasoning and all that. It's like Titania offering to loan her a few bucks is just hilarious to me.
yeah. Well, hey, Dylan, you had some news about Superman you want to talk about.
Yes, well, my two hobbies kind of converge on this one because Henry Cavill, who announced that he was coming back, is no longer Superman again. But to be fair, he gets to do Warhammer 40K TV series that he's producing himself.
Cool.
Because he's like the biggest Warhammer 40K fan, I think, in Hollywood.
Nice. Yeah, I can't say I'm too bummed out about the Superman news. You know, I'm not going to watch that movie anyways. But Warhammer, man, I'll check that out. That could be a good show.
That's just the only worry I have is like the lore is so deep and it's so grimdark that I just like I don't know if people are gonna be able to like latch onto it unless he chooses the right character. There's only like two I could think of that he could play that like would be a good intro to the universe.
Yeah. Well,
Because Space Marines are unknowable.
what's that?
The Space Marines themselves are unknowable. 10-foot tall demigods who just like, you know, do nothing but fight wars for like 10,000 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of, most people aren't going to be able to get, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll get some good writers and make it so that way people unfamiliar like me can enjoy it as well as people that are longtime fans like
A lot of the
you.
good lore has been written by Dan Abnett, actually, comic book writer.
Okay.
So he's like one of the big writers for that series. So, which explains why the Annihilation was so good.
Okay.
You know, space opera.
All right. Cool. I love space opera, man. You know, Jim Starlin's one of my favorites. And I'm a Star Wars fan too.
You are. I wouldn't figure with like your pillow hanging behind you on the.
Cool.
Oh, and my big Christmas present this year was the my wife got me the hardcover slip edition of Roy Thomas's Marvel. What is it called? I didn't bring it to work, so the Marvel Age of Comics from 61 to 78.
Cool.
So like a lot of behind the scenes stuff on all of that. Not a lot of writing, but a lot of paragraphs with like pages from the comics. It's really cool.
Right on. Nice, man. Nice. All right. Well, Matt, you got anything to share with us before we start talking with Dale?
Yeah, one thing, or number two things. This is The Flash, the Blood Will Run. It's written by Jeff Johns, actually. I think it's really cool that it involves this cult called the Children of the Cicada. And they're pretty much like killing people that Wally West has saved. So he has to resave, like try to save them again. It's actually pretty I won't say dark, but you know, it definitely shows like the stabbing and stuff like that and blood.
Does this have anything to do with Mark Waid's old Speed Force cult? Is that from his run back in the 90s?
No, this is way different. Because they're only after people he saved, you know, not like not really after him. In a way they are, but like, you know, there's like, where is it? They have old there's rogues like Tar Pit, you know, coming back in there.
Oh wow.
And then like, but yeah, there's like, I'm surprised they showed this stuff, you know, back then. This is what I think the 90s, maybe. I forget what year this is, but
Yeah.
Jeff Johns run?
I think it's 2000.
2000?
Yeah.
2010s is the Jeff Johns run.
I thought it was early 2000s. But
No,
yeah,
but
I remember that. I liked the new Rogues Gallery characters that they came up with. Tar Pit and Scrap Iron was, I think, one of the other names. I believe that series introduced, I think her name was Magenta, and
Yeah,
she's a cool character from
I
what I
like Magenta
remember.
too.
I really liked her look, kind of a Carol Danvers, Star Sapphire thing, but
Yeah.
a little
Yeah,
different. You know, she
You know what?
looked
I think you
cool.
might be right because I just realized like the last one was about 8 years with 100 issues by but that was quite some months, so 4 years. I think no, because Jeff Johns was the writer before the current one, and so
Yeah.
maybe like 2010s, 2014.
No, I think Jeff John was probably ended about 2005. So like right around the turn of this century.
there's the I call him a cult leader, the guy right there. He's like lightning in his eyes,
Cool.
stuff like that.
Check out that amazing art. That must be Scott Collins.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I
nice.
like the art.
I love him.
But I recommend this. You know, I love the Flash. I have like a lot of Flash comics. The Goblin, you probably have more than me, but you know. So that's really cool. You know, the thing I showed earlier for live, this book here, it's probably really good for you, Dale, because it has all these references of martial arts in it. You know, and it has the martial art, the kung fu that me and Goblin study, and the other one I do, Wing Chun's in here too. So it's pretty cool. A lot of good references here. Like this is like a Thai thing, but you can see there's like a breakdown shots of like I guess a choreographed fight or whatever. It's called Way of the Warrior by Chris Cordell Lee. Yeah, so maybe we'll look into that. It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, while we're talking about kung fu, that Tatsu and I do some Choi Lei Fut. You know, our school has actually got a performance coming up for the Lunar New Year. So any viewers that live in the area on January 29th for the city of Millbrae, we'll be doing some lion dancing, some kung fu performances. Been working on some new nunchuck moves. Got a little nunchuck form. I think Tatsuo is doing some sword. And we even have our old guest, Doc Lock. He's going to be part of that team too. He's going to be locking and popping on some lions. So it should be cool stuff.
You have to send me the link or the info for that one. I'll make sure I make that.
Yeah.
Because
Cool, man. It's going to be a good one. We're practicing hard.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Well, without any further delays here, Dale, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Tales of the Moonlight Cutter and some other works some other items you've been working on.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just want to, before any of that, I just want to say, I've really got to make sure I've got all my info together because you guys go deep. All right. You guys really know your stuff. So, you know, I want to make sure I don't screw up too bad. My name is Dale Barry. I've been working in independent comics as both a writer, artist, publisher since 1986.
Wow.
Which would be the first black and white boom, indie black and white boom, way back in the day. I'm sort of an old school guy. I like remember 12-cent comic books. I think that was a Jack Kirby cover on that, on your Tales to Astonish there, wasn't it? It looked really awesome. I have done different series over the years. What I've done currently is in recent history is a graphic novel series. It's a Wuxia Pian. It's sort of a Chinese swordplay, supernatural fantasy with some sort of ghost paranormal kind of stuff involved, called Tales of the Moonlight Cutter. It's based on oh, there we go. Yeah, it's based on originally a small backup series I did for a black and white magazine called Tales of the Kung Fu Warriors, way back in the 90s. And I finally had a chance to bring my character back in full-fledged in his own series, and so I did. There are 5 books so far in the graphic novel series. I write it and draw it and produce it in my own little imprint called Myriad Publications. Myriadpublications.com for those of you scoring at home. It's also currently in pre-production as an animated series with Legion M, who as producing partners. Also, the showrunner is Jeff Yang, who was the sort of the cultural attaché for Marvel's Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. And he also has a couple of blogs about Asian representation in the media, and he's done a couple of books on that. He's done a couple of graphic novel series himself, and so he's going to be the showrunner on the series. Powerhouse Entertainment has been attached to do the animation. They're the people who do Castlevania for Netflix, and David Uslan, the son of Michael Uslan, the producer on all the Batman movies. His son David is the executive producer on the series. So that's currently in what they call pre-production now. And where basically that means we're sort of putting the first 3 seasons together, sort of the Bible for the first 3 seasons.
Nice.
And
Cool. Really cool.
yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. And
That's awesome.
yeah, it's that's a whole new thing for me. I'm used to, like I said, I'm used to doing comics and commercial artwork and advertising work, that kind of thing. And so the whole sort of the Hollywood film production part of it is a new experience. But we're learning, and
Cool.
they
So-
haven't got rid of it yet. So
What's the timeline on that series? When are you guys thinking it might be available for watching?
we're talking, actually at this stage, it's early days. It's animation takes a long time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
produce. So, I wouldn't, I would expect it to start emerging and to start everybody to start hearing a lot more about it
2025,
probably
maybe?
in the next year or two. It'll take a couple of years for
Okay.
it to finally, get completed and distributed out there. But in the meantime, that's sort of half the fun. It's we're going over all the scripts, we're going over the stories for the episodes, the seasonal story arcs, the fun stuff like character design and what the world is going to look like, on what everybody's combat moves are going to be, that kind of thing. We're getting down into the nitty gritty right now.
Wow, cool. All right. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, and additionally, other stuff I've done is I was lucky enough to become the first comics artist to be published in Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine.
Wow.
Is that what
Hey.
your wife, one of her first
Yeah,
stories?
60
Nice.
years they'd never done one, right? They'd never had a comic story. So the editor approached me and asked me if I would be their first, contributor as to do
Nice.
graphic short stories. So I did 3 of those. The second one was in consideration for the Edgar Award, which is a big mystery
Nice.
sort of Oscar
Oh, wow.
for best short story. Didn't make it. That's okay. We were long listed. That's plenty good enough. Also, I've got sort of a crime noir graphic novel with a comics theme, actually, that I did with a crime author named Gary Phillips called The Bebop Barbarians. And that's in hardback in full color. That's available. And that's the story of 3 African-American cartoonists based on 3 actual African-American cartoonists who most fans don't realize, in the comics industry were African-American. And they get involved in sort of corruption in the comics publishing industry. And there's sort of a noir element. And the Red Scare is also factored into the story, and sort of the dawn of the civil rights movement. It all takes place in New York in the 1950s.
Hey,
Ooh, that sounds incredible.
I'm going to go grab that real quick. Why don't you guys keep on the conversation and I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. I've got a copy right here if you need
Oh,
it.
okay.
Hang on.
Yeah, why
There-
don't you pull it on out? I really love the artwork in it. There's
Ooh.
just, I felt there was a good diversity of different styles in there. I was just, really impressed. Maybe you can flip open a couple different pages, show our viewers.
Sure. Actually, yeah,
good
that
stuff,
was
man.
that was a deliberate thing, actually. Since several of the characters sort of have flashbacks that either involve their work or sort of adult theming going on in there, or some of their comics work. I actually had to draw this in 3 or 4 different styles.
Yeah.
So there was, so if there was a 1950s war comic, like a Korean war comic, I had to draw it to look like that. Or if there was a romance comic, or if there was a crime comic. And then there was like the standard sort of approach I did to in just the here's a good page. It's a nice fight scene. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah.
The coloring is really beautiful on that.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yeah, it was the coloring was done. It was just an awesome professional job. Well, everybody involved actually. Gary, who wrote it, is he did the Vigilante graphic novel series for DC.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he's also a script writer for the Snowfall TV series on FX.
Oh, okay.
And and he and I got to talking one night at a mystery writers conference about famous Black cartoonists in comics history and how nobody knows about them, and just representation and all of that. And he came back about a year later and said, hey Dale, I got the script, let's do this. And it's like, oh damn, okay, now we're on. All right, so we did that, and we got Justin Birch to do the lettering, and a guy named James Brown, oddly enough, to come in and do the coloring, and they just did an incredible job.
Cool.
So
cool.
yeah, I would totally recommend that. You could find that most bookshelves.
Amazon probably has it, I think. You have your
Yeah.
Tales of the Moonlight Cutter series, I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in my inbox. They're in my checkout box right now, 2 through 5. Till I get paid.
Moonlight Cutter was a big fun thing, because you guys were talking about practicing Choi Li Foot and Wing Chun, and I'm like, oh, okay, these guys go deep. All right, because for me, like, I'm 60s child, 70s teenager, right? And so I kind of grew up with like the early Bruce Lee on the Green Hornet kind of days, and the first big kung fu movie boom in the 70s and all of that.
Cool.
And so I think a lot of kids who grew up in that era, we were just sort of like, that was a new and exciting thing. And so whenever we got a chance to study anything, we would absolutely gravitate toward that. So so I got a chance to actually study quite a few sort of cross-training different arts. And I eventually became a fencer and a fencing instructor.
Oh, wow.
For Cal State University. French and Italian, foil, epee, and saber.
Foil, saber?
Yeah, foil and saber and epee.
Nice.
Both French and Italian. I did it for 26 years. I taught for Cal State for the last 6, 7, 8 years of that.
Nice.
Yeah. The fun thing though was that like after a while, like you learn those systems, and then you end up meeting other people in the classes who are also cross-trained. So I got to work with kung fu guys and karate guys, Filipino escrimadores, all these different sort of styles. And so I can proudly say I have had my butt kicked by the best.
Nice, nice.
I think is what-
I have to say, once I know enough about a lot of fighting styles and that to know like when something looks fake and all that. It's like I'm not a fighter in general. It's like that's not my sort of thing, but it's like fencing. I was just watching the Wednesday Addams show that they did, and she has a fencing arc in the first episode, and it's just like that's not how it works.
Yeah, no. It's I think if you actually do it to any kind of degree, whenever you're watching like the performance, like a TV film, movie version of it or something, right? When you can tell the difference between the real thing and choreography.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's very true.
But when they actually, there's things that do manage to like blur the line between the two. Stardust and Princess Bride, I think, come to mind because their fencing is like Stardust, not so much, but Princess Bride's choreography and fencing.
Yeah, Princess Bride, yeah, that's sort of the state of the art right there. That's got all of the cool things that like every fencer wishes they could do in a match. You know what I mean? It's however, I'll give props to Stardust. There were some very slick moves in that were proper. So yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of comic ties in that too, because that's Charlie Cox of Daredevil fame.
Was it really same guy?
Yeah.
That makes it that makes a lot of sense. That figures.
Yeah. Stardust, that was that Neil Gaiman Charles Vess comic adaptation.
Henry Cavill's in that.
I haven't seen
also-
that since it came out, but that was cool.
I just rewatched it again like 2 weeks ago. It's
Oh,
such
yeah.
an amazing movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
I should watch it again then. I don't even remember it. It's been like 20 years now or
I think
something.
it's on HBO Max or something like that. So
Yeah, there's a great
Okay.
little saber a fight at the end, and it's not very long, but it's choice.
All right,
And
cool.
yeah, and it's totally worth it. There's a couple of moves you're like, I gotta remember that one. Wait a minute. It's like,
and Robert De Niro was insanely good in that movie.
yeah. Actually, that was one of the things. That was one of the things in Moonlight Cutter. That was one of the reasons I did Moonlight Cutter that drew me to the material, is because I had grown up as such a fan, as well as someone who was practicing it, and I had done like Yang style Tai Chi Chuan. I'd done Shotokan. I'd cross trained with all these people. I was studying European fencing, and so I was when I discovered sort of the wuxia martial arts films, the sword play ones, not necessarily the fist and foot pictures, but the ones that are like taking place in ancient China, medieval China, with all the flying swordsmen and stuff. I just fell in love with it, and that whole sort of world. And I was like, well, how do you draw that, right?
Yeah.
You capture it
And,
very well, actually. I will say, it's like I just reread the book again this morning for the third time, just to like kind of keep it fresh in my head for the interview today. And it's just like there's a couple of brilliance. Exactly. What Keith's holding up right there is like
Yeah, I was just looking at that
captures
one.
it. It's a very hard thing to capture and still, but it's like you managed to do it well.
Thank you very much. I wish I could say that was all me, but it's not. It's I mean, I was heavily influenced at first by like every Western martial arts comic that was out there, right? The old Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. I was reading all of those. I was reading over at Charlton Comics. They had a series called House of Yang that was actually drawn by a Korean artist and took place during the Boxer Rebellion.
Oh,
And
cool.
so it had a lot of like really accurate flavor to it. And Iron Fist, of course, and all of the Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter from DC. Fun. Wally Wood, Jack Kirby.
I have one question because it's like I forget who the artist was on that though, but when Nightwing got his ongoing series, that first artist and all that had a lot of similar sort of things to it. And I can't think of what that artist's name is now off the top of my head.
On which character?
Nightwing, when he got his first ongoing solo series with Chuck
Oh,
Dixon.
right. Yeah. He got the guy with all the muscles, McDaniel.
Yeah, Scott McDaniel.
Scott McDaniel. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what, late 90s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, these series that Dale's talking about are great, right? The early master of kung fu, co-created by Jim Starlin, one of
Jim
my
Starlin.
favorites, and then Richard Dragon was great because they had like a different artist every issue until they found the regular artist. So they had Jim Starlin in there. They had Jack Kirby did an issue. They had really
Wally
really
Wood
good
is
stuff.
who was one of the
Wally
great old
Wood.
school guys. Yeah, he worked on that for a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Dick
those are
Giordano was
cool.
who would work with Neil Adams. But okay, so on that, right? I first started going like you do. You go to manga and you start checking out, the Lone Wolf and Cub and
Hmm.
Kamui and a couple of other of the series over there, and but then I was like, well, but how do you do Chinese martial arts? How do you draw and illustrate and sequence, kung fu? Oh, there we go, right there.
Yeah, I think that's a Jim Starlin cover.
Yeah. So that led me to to heading over to Chinatown here in San Francisco. And at the time, Hong Kong was producing not manga but manhua,
Yeah.
which were full color Chinese comic books. They were digitally colored before the US was doing it, and they came out weekly. And the martial arts at that time, like in the 90s, American comics were sort of 80s and 90s, American comics were sort of going through a renaissance. There were a lot of great talent coming out. But the same thing was happening, like unknown to anybody, at that time in Hong Kong. And there were like these incredible artists and storytellers coming out doing martial arts books. And so even though I am woefully illiterate in Chinese, I could not read a word. I was down there every week at the newsstand buying the latest issue. And I learned an awful lot on like how to distinguish different styles, how to illustrate the stances and the moves and the whole thing. And it didn't matter like how complicated the weapon was, for instance, right? Rope darts, nunchakus, 3-section stabs, all these kind of fairly complicated weapons, sword fights that were just these elaborate sequences of Chinese straight sword versus Japanese katana. It was just elaborate stuff, and these guys could just illustrate them perfectly so that you could actually distinguish the differences and how they were used and how they were applied. So you actually learned a lot, not just artistically, but in terms of the storytelling and in terms of the use of the weapon and the style and everything. So I just there was about a 3-year period where I barely read American comics. I was just down there like absorbing all this stuff directly into my head. And I finally started looking for the same kind of stuff in Western comics, and I wasn't finding it. So I was like, well, we need to do something over here that had that kind of more genuine flavor. And so when I got the chance to launch Moonlight Cutter in its own series, that's what I did. That was to put in all of the cool visual riffs that I had learned and taught myself. So when you guys thank you for complimenting me on how I handle the combat. Thank you. I take a great deal of pride in it, but I learned it from the Hong Kong books, and also then secondarily from manga, from the Japanese books, and then from American artists.
Cool.
That's awesome, man.
Well, that's a testament of like you can follow a story. Like if you can't read the language, can you understand the story enough just looking at the visuals? It's like
absolutely, and that was I think their strength. It was like literally I could eventually I found out who the characters were and what the relationships were, right? But you could sort of tell what that was, and just from reading the books, just from the pictures, from the sequencing. I will. I'm going to drop a name that I would recommend if for anybody interested in really high class, perfect, almost perfect kung fu comic books.
Mhm.
There's a guy working out of Hong Kong. His name is Ma Wing Shing, and he originally did a series called Chinese Hero, We got some translation over here in English as The Blood Sword and Blood Sword Dynasty. And he currently does a series called Storm Riders.
Okay, that's cool. That sounds great.
Yeah. And they are like major over in China right now. Like you can go to like Storm Riders amusement parks and things. It's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's huge. But his artwork is incredible, and just the storytelling on how you break down and show the martial arts is just letter perfect.
Nice. Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's been a major inspiration. I do not hesitate to in a handful of old American guys.
I'm guessing Miller might be one with a little of influence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm right in that sweet spot, in the 80s ninja craze, when it came on. Before that would be Neil Adams, the Neil Adams Batman books. He gave this real natural sense of movement to Batman. Whenever you watched him fight, it was like watching a movie.
Cool.
And also earlier, a guy named Jimmy Steranko.
Jim Steranko?
Yeah, absolutely. The old Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. There'd be entire pages where it's just Nick Fury, doing jujitsu through a horde of Hydra agents or something. And,
Nice.
And panel to panel continuity was just sweet.
Nice. Yeah. I really like some of those, some great covers on that Shield series.
Absolutely.
Really kind of like semi psychedelic, just like, almost every issue could be like a poster up on the wall in your black light room.
yeah, totally. They totally could. Yeah. He would be like
Goodreads. There's 18 volumes of Storm Riders between two series, Storm Riders and Storm Riders Invading Sun.
Okay. That's a lot of reading.
But I think that's just the English translations though that are available so far.
If you can find any of the earlier ones, either for Chinese Hero or Blood Sword, I would also recommend those. That was what was going on when I got into it.
Yeah.
And then Storm Riders came along. And Storm Riders is sort of like the super powered version. Everybody's doing great kung fu and throwing like plasma beams at each other at the same time. So
how do you spell pharaoh? Pharaoh?
Like the Egyptian pharaoh?
How do you mean?
So you say Chinese Pharaoh? I'm not
Hero.
sure.
H-E-R-O.
Hero.
Oh, okay.
Hero.
Yeah.
Chinese hero. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I think that's really cool that have something that shows kung fu pretty in a good way. That's really cool to see. I appreciate that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like normally it's sort of like the gimmick the villain uses, or it's some sort of like it's a side ability that Daredevil has or Batman has or something like that. But no. It's sort of the driving motivation for the drama and the character interactions and things, and so it's good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, it's good to it'll be nice to see it done correctly too. Like over my holiday I'd picked up some old comics, and one of them had an ad for Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, which is like a Shang-Chi magazine, and I don't recall the artist, but this ad, they're having him do some nunchucks, right? And so I pulled out my nunchucks to kind of see what he was doing, and like the way that his arms, I think they were doing some back catches, and it looked okay, but when I tried to move my arms, I was like, you can't do that. And then the last move was this weird forward flip thing, and I'm just like, so I was trying that. I'm just like, yeah, no, these aren't real moves. This is like nothing. So it's like, at least a B for effort. They at least tried to make it look good, but so my partner and I were talking about that for a while. And
I think they just watched Enter the Dragon, and that was probably the only reference they had.
Yeah, maybe. So it'll be cool to check out these Ma Wing Ching books, see some research stuff. Yeah.
It's funny. I remember looking at the old, like the Flash comics they have or stuff like that from like the 90s or before, and there's like ads in there, but to like learn like kung fu or something like that, and the address and stuff. And have like
Yeah.
Learn from a book.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
will be a deadly weapon in 5 short weeks.
I keep wondering how many people like, broke their hands on cement bricks over those years.
Guaranteed.
Oh,
Yeah, I could do this, man. I can.
There's-
mind over matter.
So I saw this video right a few years ago. It was about this like kung fu performance tournament thing. I think it was from I couldn't tell, the 70s or 80s, I forget when. But the kung fu looked good, but it was mainly not much kung fu, but more like demonstration of people using their energy in certain ways, like hitting a nail into wood, right? And the narrator made me laugh, right? He was talking about how people harness their chi energy and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't understand what that really is, because it's more just internal energy, right? But at the end of it, he was like, it's been said that Shaolin monks were so masterful with the chi that they could levitate through the air, and he was serious, and it was just made me laugh so hard.
Oh man.
Like, he
I think-
probably wasn't believing it.
Yeah, I think it's cool
Okay.
for drama. I think it's, if you're doing like a a fantasy film or something like that, right? Then it becomes like, I don't know, like an old Sinbad movie or something. It's got that certain, it's dramatic and it's cool and it's exciting to watch. But yeah, I wouldn't try jumping off a roof anytime
No, heck
soon.
no. Don't do that.
Like what? There's hilarity to be had watching Ancient Aliens, like just because like picturing how much that narrator has to drink to get through like those episodes. Because it is ridiculous the like logic they lead to sometimes. It's like it's the best comedy on TV right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My partner, she went on holiday to her mom's before me. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch Ancient Aliens, all the stuff I'm not allowed to watch. And yeah, that lasted 1 episode. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm moving on to History of the Ottoman Empire. Okay.
Yeah, I worry, as a sword guy, I worry about that because like, you see so many like so many anime films, for instance, right? There's a lot of, swordplay where these, people are like hefting these swords that are like the size of a phone booth. And it's just like, oh my God, you can't pick that up. You can't wield it. If you tried to, you would, cut your own legs off. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And
Like the
I
Cloud
worry
Buster
about
sword.
the impression,
Yeah, I've seen that trend, like Ilana Rasputin magic in the X-Men comics, right? Her soul sword. You can
It's just
see
tall as
how
she
that
is.
grows in like the popularity of what kind of swords based on these anime you're talking about, because it used to be a sword and now it's just this thing, like a rectangle, a giant rectangle with a tiny little handle.
From Final Fantasy 7.
What's that?
From Final Fantasy 7, like the Buster Sword, the Cloud carries.
Exactly, right.
Or Rurouni Kenshin. Sanosuke has this big blade. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, not to say that like, the Hong Kong comics didn't go there, right? Like there'd be, there was one sequence, I think, in an old Chinese hero where, the hero and his evil, villainous rival were finally having a showdown, and it was Chinese straight double-edged sword called a John versus a Japanese katana, and it became sort of epic over in Hong Kong and comics readers because they fought it on top of the Statue of Liberty in New York, and it turned into this huge apocalyptic Marvel style fight that lasted like 6 issues and ended up with the Statue of Liberty being destroyed.
Wow, epic.
Yeah, it was worth it, but dang, it's like, guys, you were running up the side of the Statue of Liberty and chopping the arm off. That's crazy.
Nice.
Chopping the arm
Now,
off.
that explains how Commandy got to where he got to.
Yeah, I think there's a movie version actually. You could find it in the movie version. They did a pretty good job. I was just like, wow, okay, cool, right on. They did it. They went there.
Cool. And I'm sorry, what was the movie version of what's the title?
The movie version was called A Man Called Hero.
Okay.
Man called Hero.
And it's sort of, yeah, it's sort of condensed like the first 200 something issues of the comic book series, boom, into one movie.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Well, say Dylan, you had indicated you had a few questions for Dale. You want to?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to something we were talking about earlier because
Sure,
of
sure.
the person who studied writing for a while, like on his own and all that. I did.
Yeah.
This very much felt like a treatment, but like the animation thing kind of answered my question on that one. And then,
Originally I didn't do it as, with that in mind. I did it entirely to sort of show off Hong Kong comics technique
yeah.
in an American comic.
Well, because it's like this one, which is the only one I have gotten to read so far, but it's like why the others are in my book. It's a very good one and done.
Thank you.
Storyline.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was, I definitely wanted, it to be sort of the introduction to the character and the style and the world, and try and cram all of that into the big introduction issue. Right.
Yeah.
But, and then subsequent issues sort of expand on different elements of, the fighting or the history or, the martial culture or whatever. Or the supernatural, the rules of the ghost world and things like that.
Yeah, how much of that was you and how much is actual Chinese mythology? Like, my Chinese mythology is like very poor, unfortunately, but
you know what? It's I'd say 60-40 in favor of actual mythology.
nice.
I did some deep dives. I researched Taoist exorcisms and sort of ghost lore, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
In fact, okay, here's something I'm like ridiculously proud of. There's a sequence in the first issue where they have a person who's been possessed and he's bound in place, and there's sort of these paper sort of magical charms tied
Yeah,
to the
from
body.
when he first gets to the troop
Yeah,
with
Yeah.
them, it's like they're trying to burn the papers or whatever for to get
Yeah,
the
exactly.
possession gone from their exorcist, was it?
yeah, from the traveling exorcist, and when they go into the temple and the exorcist has been possessed and bound up, right? There's these sort of like also paper charms sort of
Mhm.
like stuck to the body. I like I said, I did some fairly deep research, and those are in fact the actual paper charms that a
Nice.
10th century Chinese exorcist, a Taoist priest, would use to bind the body in place, to keep it from coming back to life and eating everybody in the party.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
That's
so
pretty neat.
yeah, I was proud of that one. I was like, wow, okay, nobody, even if nobody knows what this is or nobody can read it or whatever, doesn't matter. It's going to feel right. It's going to have the right kind of vibe and atmosphere to it,
Is it Shen
Shen Huayan.
Xinhua Yan? Okay, he's a very good character, and it's like the other thing I was kind of noticing on like my third read through, since I like to do my research, is you did get to play with a lot of different influences and all that. Like when he first gets there, and he like the scene we were talking about where he meets with the possession for the first time, is I get to see the Frank Miller influence in that one scene, because that's very much a Frank Miller sort of face reveal with the
Oh yeah, where he's coming in out of the fog.
yeah. But also there was let me see if I can find it really quickly. Oh, there was like
Yeah, like I thought what Dylan's looking, I thought kind of the first page, reminded me, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like Dave Sims Cerebus or something, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
that's exactly kind of the page I was looking for, like on this part right there with the single line, like sort of breathe in for the fog and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous. That's very Lone Wolf and Cub. And so some of the Chinese comics I saw as a kid, like because I used to go to the San Jose flea market and like find all sorts of weird stuff there for cheap.
Yeah.
And you just pick up and look at.
Oh, yeah, those are the best. And one of the things I really liked about Japanese manga and about Hong Kong manhwa was the fact that it wouldn't necessarily stick to one artistic style all the way through. You know, they would use whatever kind of technique best expressed the action that was going on. So if you could do just a few lines for that person to suggest that person in the fog, and then go greater detail as the character comes closer and closer, they'll go there. And so that was something I wanted to try too, you know.
Yeah, that worked really well for that, for sure.
Thank you, thank you. Or I think there's another sequence later on where the character's doing sort of a leaping cut over somebody else's head, and so I drew like the 7 or 8 different body positions to show.
Oh yeah.
And actually, the middle portion.
Yeah.
My
Oh,
favorite.
wow. Yep, there we go. Yeah, exactly.
And that was like probably the best scene in the whole thing was, for me, it was the bastard.
Yeah, where they're fighting in the rafters. Thank you. Yeah, that was a lot of that is definitely, you know, for me, was just being influenced by reading so much manga and so much manhwa, and but also a lot of it's just, you know, sort of really good classic storytelling. You know, you lay out the page and the panel to panel continuity in such a way that you build up to those dramatic revealing moments.
Yeah, I think the cap on this whole thing, though, the icing on the cake for me was the last page, which is like him just like saying, like, before the troop that like held their friend and, like, you know, tried to keep it together for as long as they did. It's like their actions were more heroic than what he did in like a single night.
Yeah, well, that's sort of an important thing, I think, to me, because you know, and this may be as a result of martial arts kind of, you know, and swordplay training and things like that. There's so often, you know, you see sword fights in movies and it's one person taking out 300 people, and then when they're done, they're not exhausted and they're not hurt, and there's no sort of emotional cost to it. And that's just doesn't feel like real life to me.
It is not.
I call it
right.
The
You know, it's
Johnson
like,
effect.
if you're ever if you're ever using kung fu in a fight, right, by the time you're done, you are sore, you hurt, you know.
Yes.
And you know, and you're left sometimes you're left sitting there going, wow, how did I screw that up, or how, you know, or how did this happen, you know. And that's sort of natural and necessary to the growth and, you know, self-improvement and all of that. And especially when it comes to playing with sharp objects, right? Nobody goes into a sword fight and comes out of it, you know, entirely intact. And so you know, so in order to show a character able to do that, I felt you also had to show the emotional cost, right, on the characters, the impact on the hero, on all the supporting people, things like that. So it was important.
Yeah,
flawless hero is not interesting.
Well, that's also part of the drama, you know.
Yeah.
That also makes for good stories, I think.
That's why I like John Wick and the Keanu Reeves as an actor generally, because he always takes a lot of lumps in his films.
He does, and you know, and John Wick is a great example. I mean, they're fun. I love those movies, but there's a certain point where, you know, after he's mowed down 80 people, and you're like, dude, why are you still standing? You know, it's time to go. It's time to go.
Limping definitely, like, very heavily by the end of the first, or all 3 of the films. It's like he takes a lot of hits.
Yeah, he does. And to his credit, you know, he's got to take time out occasionally to, you know, stitch himself up or something, you know. So
yeah.
you know, nobody gets away entirely scot-free on this, you
know. One of the things I really like in your story is the sword, the Cold Moon sword. Like, I like that, the description of it, that it can cut through like spirits or something like that, kind of like a cleansing sword, sort of sounds like.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, that you know, that was I want, rather than invent my own universe,
yeah.
I wanted to make it like the traditional Chinese ghost universe, you know. And so I built everything around the actual sort of historical rules for all that, you know. So that's what a ghost killing sword would do, you know. And so that's what made it fun. It's like it wasn't just my rules where I could just go, oh well, anything could happen today. I'm sort of bound by what history would reflect, you know.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious how big the Bible is for this series. Since
You know, how many books on Chinese history and mythology and culture are there? You know, basically the rules are ghosts are real, right? And so whatever country you come from in during that time period, the rules for those ghosts would apply.
So Japanese rules would be different for the Chinese rules.
Yeah, it would be. Or if a medieval knight in armor came up, or an Islamic warrior from Saladin from the Middle East came up, you know, you'd be dealing with all of these different sort of types of supernatural.
And I'm assuming there's very few weapons that can actually kill a ghost, like where it's gone or non-existent anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I figured, what happens, you know, if you create that sort of ultimate weapon and then throw it into the real world?
Because it was like probably my one piece of confusion in the first issue is like, if you took him out before, but dead is dead with the sword, it's like I couldn't figure that, like trying to figure out that logic was
well at that point in time in medieval China, right, when you died, you immediately became a ghost. Your ghost immediately went to hell for judgment, went to like sort of purgatory for judgment, and then you were sent to a hell for a while to pay off whatever sins you did in life. And then once you did that, you were able to re-elevate back into the world and reincarnate. And so you do that enough times, and you eventually purify yourself enough time, you learn all the lessons that you're supposed to learn. And then when you finally die that final time, you finally get to go to heaven. And so everybody becomes a ghost at some point. Ghosts are real common and every day. You know, you pay respect to your ancestors, or there's certain, you know, festivals during the year where you pay respect to the deceased, and it's a real commonplace kind of thing. And so that was sort of the conflict. It's like, well, in a universe full of ghosts, you can't just run around randomly killing every ghost, right? You sort of have to investigate why the ghost is haunting, and you end up having to solve the mystery of it as well. And sort of, you have to advocate for the ghost as much as for the living people. So it's sort of set up a conflict.
Yeah, cool, man. That's well thought out. You know, clearly this means is a big part of your life that you've spent a lot of time researching and thinking about. Is just amazing.
Probably too much, man. I don't know, but you know, it translates. You know, it's like I just wanted to, regardless of what one's background, if one picks up a copy, you know, and reads the Moonlight Cutter story, it had to have like an internal logic, and I just wanted it to feel right, to feel true and make sense, and you know, not be, you know, not talk down about anybody, or not, you know, patronize anybody, or not say this is better or that's better. It's just like, this is just humanity, and this is humanity whether you're alive or dead, you know.
Yeah. That's great. And you know, you mentioned representation a few times, and some of the things you've been talking about. That's great. That's been a big part of, well, not a big part of our show, but something that we've brought up in our show. It's very important to all of us. So glad that is important to you as well. So say, I think we're about ready to wrap up here, but before we go, are there going to be more issues of Tales of the Moonlight Cutter? You working? I know you're busy on the cartoon, but any more books in store for us?
There is. I've got 3 or 4 different sort of epic length stories sort of in the pipeline that I've been working on. I've also considered going back and doing sort of the untold origin story as a fantasy novel, perhaps, or maybe an illustrated novel. So a lot of it depends on my schedule. You know, I'm getting pulled in a lot of different directions these days, but you know, but Moonlight Cutter is always something I can go back to and The older I get, the better I get, then the better the Moonlight Cutter stories will become as I do.
Just like some fine wine.
That's nice. That's a nice thought. Yeah. Hopefully.
I guess that would be my question is like, do you generally have a beginning, middle, and an end like in mind for the stories you do for him?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just think sequences. Like in my head, there'll be like a movieola going on where I'm editing, that one fight sequence would be awesome, and so how do I build a story around that makes sense and, takes the reader places. So sometimes yes, sometimes no, most of the writers that I get a chance to talk to, there's no one standard kind of formula for doing it, right? You get your inspiration wherever it comes from, and you express it however best you can,
Cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It's great talking to you, Dale, getting the insight you have on comics. Both Goblin and I are like independent comic book artists too, and that's really cool to hear from you about that kind of things.
Oh, outstanding. Yeah. No. If listen, I think anybody who's got the gift, if you can draw something or write something, right? If you're a creative to any degree, it's almost like incumbent on you to do something, just put it out there, add the light to the sum of light kind of thing,
Yeah, cool.
Perfect.
Thanks, Dale. That's
No, a pleasure.
inspiring, encouraging.
Definitely inspiring. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Tales of the Moonlight Cutter, Dale, thanks so much for joining us, man. It sounds like it's going to be a few years, but can't wait to see that cartoon. It's going to be amazing. Right up our alley, man. You got some martial arts, flying swordsmen, some ghosts. What more can you ask for, man?
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I'm sorry if I talked your ear off,
No, it's fine. It's fine.
That's exactly what we're hoping for, Dale. All right, cool. Well, so for our viewers, we should have another episode up in about 2 weeks. Same time, it'll be on a Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Any last words, anyone?
Just thanks for joining us, viewers, and it was awesome having Dale on the show. Talk about everything he's been through, so that's great.
Thank you.
As usual. Love it.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
So signing off.
Signing off.
Freaking live with that King Live. There we go. All right, let me end the live. Or